Maggie lifted her hand until her fingers aligned with the cracks in the sky. She traced the bloody fissures across the blue, her fingers travelling into the last light of day while her feet followed. Only the fence bordering the vegetable patch stopped her from chasing the sunset into its eventual death. She gripped the wire mesh, keeping her caged in life, an unfair oversight when so many others had died to the shadows, died in her hands.
"You're dawdling, girl."
Meh,
Maggie replied. "The Maroch isn't going to harvest itself, and I still want to eat tonight."
"It won't take long." Maggie turned to Puleng, who sat on a large rock near the middle of the garden. Her hair was neatly trimmed and brushed out, and she definitely wasn't dead, even if Puleng's lips were red like warning lights. Sometimes Maggie dreamed about how different the earth smelled when you dug deep enough, and Puleng's sheet-wrapped body, fragile as a bunch of sticks, exploding into a flock of mercurochrome red weaver birds when the first spadeful of dirt landed on her chest. But a slippery wrongness lived in the memory. It had something to do with the picture quality on the TV the catfish spat out for Maggie while she was drowning. If Puleng had died, then who had held her tight and stroked her hair during that first night after she was exiled from the zoo? Who was watching her now, with pursed lips and tapping fingers? Maggie frowned against the wall her thoughts had run into. Ideas didn't used to be this wormy, but her brain was all boxes and water slides now. Navigation was a hand finding a wall in the dark. She was giving herself a headache. Puleng shook her head and said something in Sesotho, too quick and low for Maggie to hear. She turned back to the sunset, to the light, and the monsters roaming the veld beyond the fence. The creatures were chimeras of mismatched animal parts, elongated to weird proportions by the sinking sun, children of light, skinned with shadows and fear. One of them stalked wobbly circles on a boulder that rose above the tall yellow grass. Its back half resembled a leopard, the front half an African wild dog, and the massive tusks sprouting from its head were straight off an elephant. The position of the tusks was misleading, a trickery that brought to mind the massive horns of those cattle Uncle Cyril owned in the time before the shadows. But Maggie wasn't fooled. The curve and tapering of the tusks made their truth obvious. The shadow's limbs stretched like chewing gum as the light faded further, its steps growing more uncertain until it collapsed. The remains oozed down the side of the boulder to nestle in the womb of deeper darkness at its base. Light's children died when she did. Once, Maggie would have welcomed the night. She would have released her invisibility power and relaxed. But now she rarely let down the shield that hid her from the world.